Hello, this is Ruth again to talk about the Kentucky budget. Something I forgot to mention in last week's introduction, and just ignore the goings on behind me, they don't know anything about the budget. I forgot to talk about something that Chris Edwards mentioned, and he's the guy who wrote that book, Downsizing the Federal Government. He calls it the Washington Monument Strategy. I've also heard it referred to as the Human Shield Strategy. And what that is you have a politician, the bureaucrats, and of course the media support them, who resist budget cuts. And so they arrange to have the budget cuts affect spending that we actually all agree on, things like police protection, fire protection, and itty bitty babies. So, in response to the public furor, the spending cuts are reinstated. All of them. The ones we agree on, the ones we disagree on. And the people who want the budget cuts are smeared as anarchists and baby haters. That crap's got to stop. In Kentucky, the Constitution says that the General Assembly is the one with the power to tax and spend. It also says that the budget must be balanced. There's no quantitative easing here. The process starts, and pardon me, I'm kind of on my own process. I'm trying to harvest my basil seeds so that maybe next year I could have enough basil for the rabbits and me. This year it was just enough for the rabbits. But the process starts in, I guess, July of odd-numbered years, where the legislator says, okay, to the agencies, look, here's how much money we think you're going to have. Of course, it's all forecasted, and because it's a 2-year process, or it covers 2 years. And then in October of odd-numbered years, the agencies come back to the legislature and say, okay, here's our draft budget. The House holds a number of public hearings, and they turn it into a bill, and it's voted on. If it's approved, then it goes to the Senate, and they pretty much do the same thing. If they approve it, it goes to a conference committee to work out the differences between the two houses. It's voted on. If it's approved, it goes to the governor, and he signs it, and everything's great. Now, of course, that's not to say there isn't tons of drama associated with that process, particularly in 2009 when you just had tax revenues that just were not there because the economy was so terrible. So what are those numbers? Well, Kentucky's budget is $27 billion. Where does that $27 billion come from? Well, there's the general fund, and $8.4 billion comes from that. And that's the main thing, the main fund where our taxes, every time you write a check, basically that's where that money is going. You've got money coming in from the tobacco shakedown. Oops, excuse me, I mean settlement. That's about $137 million each year. You have something called the restricted fund, and that's just money gathered and spent for a specific purpose as identified in a law. That is $6.1 billion. There's the road fund, which brings in another $1.2 billion. There's $300 million in bonds. But the biggest surprise to me was that the biggest portion of the Kentucky state budget comes from the feds, $11 billion. No wonder we got to do everything they tell us to do.